When I was a little girl, my dad would drop me off at school every morning in his Ford truck and then head to work at Bud Cross Ford, where he worked as a salesman. And every single evening I would wait in suspense to see which vehicle he would choose off the lot to pick me up in. There were so many to choose from, and each year they just seemed to get better and better. My dad has worked as a Ford salesman since I was 1 year old, and looking back, there's not a single memory that I have that doesn't have a Ford somewhere in the background. I think it's safe to say that a man named Henry Ford has played a large role in my family's livelihood and in my life. Whether or not you've ever driven a Ford vehicle, you've no doubt benefited from the life of Henry Ford just as much, if not more than I have, and you may not even realize it. Growing up, I learned a little bit about Henry Ford, but it wasn't until recently that I realized what an incredible person he actually was. In the next few minutes, you will be inspired by the life of Henry Ford and learn how his inventions have influenced our lives today and why he is such a great man to look up to. If you're ever to fully appreciate a person, it's important to figure out where they came from and how it molded them. Henry Ford was brought up as an average American who worked hard to overcome his obstacles and make his dreams come true. According to an article by Byron Cannon published in 2008, Ford grew up with his four younger siblings in a farm outside of Detroit, Michigan, in an area that's now known as Dearborn. As the eldest son of a farmer, Ford was set up as next in line to take over the family farm when his father had passed, but he had bigger dreams for himself. Never interested in the life of a farmer, Ford kept his mind occupied with thoughts of machines and how they worked and operated. In the same article as before, Cannon states that by the time Henry left Dearborn in 1879 to work as a machinist in Detroit, he had already developed a local reputation for his ability to repair watches. It was from here he moved on to several different companies, and his reputation and resume grew with every move that he made. By the time he was 30, Cannon states that he decided to dedicate his life to the emerging field of gasoline-powered internal combustion engines. As you can see, Henry Ford had to work hard to form the life how he wanted to, and in the process, he found his calling as an inventor. The inventions that he developed were not only revolutionary in his time, but they were the foundation of greater things to come. You may know that the name Henry Ford is the name behind Ford Motor Company, but that was just the product of the invention that started it all. His goal was to build a car that was not tailored to the rich, but that the hardworking American people could afford. In the article called America on Wheels by Sean McCollum, Ford is quoted from 1906 saying that the car for the people, the car that every man could afford that could afford a horse and carriage, was coming. And it was with this idea in mind that the Ford Model T, the most successful car in American history, was introduced to an enthralled public in 1908, according to Tyler Wells from the Historical Encyclopedia of American Business. To be able to be profitable and keep the car affordable, Ford had to figure out how to mass produce his Model T, and in his brilliant mind, the assembly line idea was born, and it was brought to life shortly after in 1913. From the same article as before, McCollum states that the assembly line revolutionized the way that manufactured products were made. The assembly line was Ford's attempt to keep up with supply and demand, and it worked better than anybody ever expected. And it was even adopted by other car and manufacturing companies. In fact, Ford's idea for the assembly line still has its place today in car companies as well as many other product producing companies. As if being the father of these inventions wasn't enough, Ford is a prime example that being a good person has its rewards. The life that Henry Ford led should motivate all of us to live up to our full potential, but at the same time keeping the interest of others in mind. Life needed to be easier for everyone, and not just at a higher price. He even ensured that his employees that worked for him were well taken care of and well compensated. In an article published in 2011 in American History, author Gene Santoro wrote that Henry Ford paid his workers enough that they could afford one of the cars that they made. But Henry Ford wasn't just worried about the happiness of his employees. He was worried about the happiness of all of America. His invention was made to supply the American average Joe with the luxury only ever afforded to the rich and upper class. And although that the prices of vehicles have greatly increased from Henry Ford's time to today, Ford is still a vehicle that can be attained by the middle class for upper class luxury and feature and design. With high ambitions, he still kept the good of others in mind. So it's easy to see how Henry Ford has solidified his place in history. Henry Ford led an interesting and productive life. He created inventions that have influenced his life and our lives still today. And he was a truly inspirational person. Hopefully it is clear that the impact that he has had on this world has created a ripple that is even still now moving. Let us all be inspired by the legacy of this great man and never forget his part in building all of our futures and livelihoods.